Hi, thank you for joining us today as we take a look at the technologies and approaches that are accelerating smart device management for multifamily dwelling units. IoT solutions are enabling multifamily property owners to tap into the benefits of smart device management. We're taking a case study view of the challenges property owners and operators faced installing and managing hundreds of smart devices across properties. And together with Klika Tech and Amazon Web Services, Quext IoT was ultimately introduced as a solution that reduces IoT hardware, simplifies installation, and comes ready out of the box to drive property-wide efficiency. We'll find out why LoRaWAN networking was key to the solution, and we'll look at the critical role as it played for implementing and managing property-wide IoT networks. Our speakers today are Trey Johnson, Vice President of Innovation at Quext, who will walk us through how Quext was built from the ground up by multifamily property operators. Gennady Borzov, President and Co-CEO of Klika Tech, will discuss the collaboration to build a flexible, secure, and expandable platform. And Kieran Rondi, a Senior Partner Solutions Architect with Amazon Web Services, will explain the benefits of building on AWS, particularly AWS IoT Core. And with that, we'll start with Trey and look at how this new approach to smart apartments began.
Thanks, Joe. Quext as a company is the core mission statement here is to make smarter decisions brilliantly simple. And the way that we do that is from the context that we have with a sister company called Madeira Residential. Madeira Residential is an owner-operator in the multifamily industry who manages and owns around 15,000 apartment units. And the way that this ties into what we're talking about today is that industry context is important when you're talking about a solution or talking about developing a solution specific to this industry. And a lot of the principles and concepts we're talking about were directly gleaned from the operational knowledge that we have at Madeira. And we spent probably 2 to 3 years at that time working for Madeira, surveying the landscape of available technologies. And for a couple of core reasons, there was not a good solution available for us to implement at Madeira Residential. And most of these came down to cost and complexity. The first two ways that, or the first way that we're able to achieve this reduction in cost is through our cutting edge, custom patented smart thermostat hub. And that's a lot of words, but basically what we've done is we've reduced the number of devices in the unit that it takes to bring an IoT solution to multifamily. And the way that we did that is combining smart thermostat functionality and hub functionality into a single device, reducing the number of devices in the unit. And the second key piece to this is the LoRaWAN technology that Joe mentioned and introduced. That allows us to reduce the networking infrastructure on a property. So instead of before having to worry about, am I going to integrate into an existing Wi-Fi network, or am I going to have to build over the top my own Wi-Fi network? Or am I going to have to use expensive cellular plans for each unit at a property? Instead of those approaches, what we've done is brought a single LoRaWAN gateway to our leasing office. And from there, we're able to connect all of our devices across the property due to the fact that the LoRaWAN gateway provides ubiquitous coverage across the property. And that's really important to be able to simplify the installation and again, drive down those capital dollars that are preventing mass adoption in our industry. There was actually a study done in 2019 where the National Apartment Association polled owner-operators like Madeira and asked, what's the #1 barrier to entry for you? And it wasn't just the #1, but cost was #1, and #2 was the complexity of the installations. And so it's not just a Madeira perspective, it's actually one that you'll see across our industry. And that's part of what makes our solution so unique. So on this slide, you'll see it's an infographic that talks a little bit more about those two things that I introduced. That's the Quext IoT thermostat and the LoRaWAN network technology. Again, the LoRaWAN Community Hub is one device that serves the entire property. So typically that's something whenever we were investigating potential groups before we started developing the solution to serve a IoT solution for our properties, we noticed that the networking piece wasn't something that was really openly discussed from a lot of these groups. And that's because of the complicated nature and the difficulty that those networks are installed with. And it really drives home the simplified approach, speaking to Quext core mission statement of making smarter decisions brilliantly simple, in that we're always focused on reducing that, the complexity of the systems and solutions. Another thing that you'll notice from the graphic here is that there is a management app and a mobile iOS Android app that our residents can use to manage their devices and manage the system in their unit. And that's where, going back to reduced complexity, we understood that a system needed to be scalable, right, in order to provide the solution to the industry in the best possible way. And a lot of those principles are evident in the way that we've architected our system, but we also understood that we needed to partner with a group that would be able to help us implement this technology and on the back end, be able to scale that in an effective and efficient way. And that's part of why we chose to partner with Klika. They're a industry recognized experts in software development. We knew that we needed experts in that field, but also in the scalability and the deployment of AWS services.
Thank you, Trey. I really appreciate it. It's been a wonderful partnership. It's a pleasure to be here. Klika is a company focused on development of IoT products and solutions. As one of the co-founders of the company, I can tell our audience that we started the company with an idea that we would like to focus our energy and our expertise on a particular industry area, not just one vertical, but the treasure trove of knowledge which exists to specifically bring IoT solutions to market. From hardware recommendations and integration, firmware development, and cloud native development, full end-to-end complement, full end-to-end expertise to not only develop solutions, not only deploy, but to engineer solutions with specialists such as Quext, Madera Residential, to understand importance of specific industry details. And working with Trey's team, we started from a business side of it, from an understanding of how our expertise across multiple verticals can contribute to engineer the system, which we will be talking about today. Assembling that knowledge coming from multiple teams, from our previous developments, from understanding of specifically real estate industry and what is important to not only real estate owners, managers, and operators, but what is important to tenants, how to make them feel comfortable, how to make them feel at home, led to the architecture which exists today. What you see here on the screen right now is a high-level architecture of the system we've built together. And I would like to emphasize here that building it together was not only coding side by side, not only looking at the hardware or firmware and creating voice skills or anything you would see in the partner app or tenant app. It meant putting our heads together to understand the importance and how the system should look today and work today, what we're expecting from the platform tomorrow, and how we can make this platform future-proof through evolution of hardware devices Trey described, as well as evolution of the platform. We've selected AWS and AWS particular AWS IoT Core, as well as other building blocks to power this platform, and collaborated specifically on the flexibility of the platform, security, and expandability element. So it doesn't need to be rewritten every time we want to add a particular new feature. Looking at particular requirements of the platform, specifically within the industry, we focused on the security of the platform, minimization of, as Trey described it, number of hardware devices, and the simplified and secure data flow to get as much data as possible from devices currently existing or future added to smart apartments or smart buildings, getting them into a secure data storage and understanding the data to make proper conclusions and to drive the overall ROI of this platform. ROI not only from the technology side, but ROI specifically for the real estate apartment owners and operators. And if we look at the architecture on the screen right now, you will see that the platform has been designed to be truly multi-tenant, not only from the data separation perspective, but as well fully adherent to the concept known as infrastructure as a code. Each client using the platform has IoT connection endpoint, as well as unique device authentication certificates, access URLs, and full access authentication. So the entire platform is device to the edge, edge to the cloud, fully secure. As well as audit and credential management on the platform uses full serverless approach using AWS infrastructure for remote access, as well as any planned maintenance situations. One of the cornerstones, and actually the cornerstone of the platform, as Trey described it, is a thermostat, which is compatible with a very large, broad array of various devices, which could be installed at the apartment and supports multiple protocols. This device is a truly future-proof device supporting Bluetooth, supporting Z-Wave and Zigbee protocols, which opens up a pretty unlimited universe of what devices and or combination of devices can be installed at apartments. And as Trey mentioned, the Quext IoT app streamlines device control and gives residents access to a very intuitive, kind of a lifestyle-driven platform for adjusting their settings and adding various devices. And as I mentioned, platform was built on AWS, utilizing AWS IoT Core, utilizing Kinesis for data aggregation delivery, as well as fully secure architecture for data aggregation and analysis.
Thank you, Gennady. I'm really excited to be here and talk here. Uh, good afternoon and good evening, everyone, depending on where you are. I'm Kiran Randi, based out of Seattle. I work as an AWS solutions architect, covering multiple partners here in US West. So before talking about why AWS IoT, I would like to talk like what is IoT and then why IoT. I mean, like if you look at digital transformations wherein customers don't buy IoT, they invest in solutions to drive business outcomes, especially decreasing OpEx through increased efficiency and increasing revenue by enabling new products, revenue streams, and business models. I would say IoT is a critical component of virtually all digital transformation journeys and provides the data ingestion pipeline wherein you can power data lakes and big data initiatives, robotics, analytics, and then AI/ML. So, and like in general, like if the data is the new oil, IoT is the pipeline. Like once a customer has the ability to unlock their IoT data, they can use the AWS cloud to build their data lake and then derive business insights from that data using like ML, using machine learning and analytics services as well. I mean, like it's a big lift to connect these devices to the cloud, and many customers like plan device lifespans of like 10 years or like more. So once the devices are connected using AWS IoT, they are likely to stay. So once a while ago, like Andy Jassy, the CEO of like Amazon Web Services, said, like when we think about 10 years from now, and when we think about hybrid, we don't think the on-premises part is going to be in data centers. We think the on-premises part will be like in billions of these devices sit at the edge, like such as like in our houses, in our offices, in the factories, in the oil fields, and agricultural fields. I mean, like there is no limitation to it. Like you can expand it to planes, ships, and automobiles everywhere. So these devices have relatively little CPU and relatively little disk. So the cloud becomes disproportionately important in implementing all of those devices. I mean, like if you look at yet AWS, we start our customer engagements for IoT with a simple question. If you knew the state of everything and you could reason on top of the data, what problems would you like to solve? So our mission here at AWS is to make sure that you can know the state of everything of all your devices, and that you can on reason up on top of data, so that you can truly solve your business problems. AWS IoT provides broad and deep functionality. I mean, like if you look at a Kennedy slide, the architecture, they've used a wide range of like AWS services, all the way from serverless to server-based services. So spanning the edge to the cloud, so you can build IoT solutions for virtually any use case across a wide range of devices. So in that regard, like AWS IoT Core is a managed service, which you have seen in the previous architecture, which Kennedy has presented. So it's a managed service that lets connected devices easily and securely interact with cloud applications and other devices. I mean, like AWS IoT services provide end-to-end encryption for connected devices. I mean, like, so with AWS IoT, you can have the local communication and the offline communication. I mean, like, so when we speak about local communication and offline communication, AWS green grass devices like can act locally on the data they generate, so they can respond quickly to local events while still using the cloud for management, analytics, and durable storage. So this will like further cut down on the time and cost it takes for data to make a round trip to the cloud. Devices can easily connect to devices running like AWS Greengrass. And with AWS IoT, over the air updates is pretty much like possible, like when the devices are running on like AWS Greengrass, so that you can easily deploy security updates, bug fixes, and new feature updates to smart devices in the field. So I mean, like this slide, like wherein you can see multiple AWS IoT services, helps you manage that complexity. I mean, like while building an IoT solution, usually there are like three questions that comes into mind. So how do I extract value for my IoT data? I mean, like you can see the analytic services there in the picture. And how can I control, manage, and secure my devices? That's where like connectivity and control services come into play. And how can I connect my devices and operate at the edge? I mean, like that's where like device software comes into play. I mean, like in a sense, like you need a three different types of services and software. I mean, like such as IoT device software that comes into play when you need to build devices that operate at the edge and then work with the cloud. Likewise, we have IoT connectivity and control services to connect, manage, and secure your devices at scale from the cloud, and the IoT analytics services. I mean, like, and again, like since AWS IoT integrates with EAS services, you can make devices smarter. I mean, like even without the internet connectivity. So built on the AWS cloud, used by millions of customers in 190 countries, AWS IoT can easily scale as your device fleet grows and then your business requirements evolve. So AWS IoT offers the most comprehensive security features, so you can create preventative security policies and respond to any immediately to any potential security issues.
But we wanted to maybe just take a quick look, throw a question to you, Trey, just
Sure.
why LoRa? Why this differentiates Quext IoT?
Yeah, I think that points out, I wish I could have spent a little more time talking about LoRaWAN and what its benefits really are. if you could, if you remember back to the infographic that we posted up there, we had a list of devices, and that number that was represented on the infographic was 501. What that means is to service a property with thermostats and locks, which are the two devices that I think most industry groups agree that provide the greatest ROI for residents and operators. To bring those devices to bear, all you need are the devices themselves, so the 250 locks, 250 thermostats, and one LoRaWAN gateway. If you compare that to a competitor's offering, what you'll notice is the same thing that Madeira noticed back in 2018 when we started to look at the different solutions, and that was that it's complicated and there are a lot more devices that you don't necessarily see. You think about the smart lock and a smart thermostat provides a certain value to residents, but all of the complexities and the costs that go into being able to provide that service don't necessarily line up, and it drives that cost way up. And so LoRaWAN as a technology, what it stands for is long range wide area network. And if you were in the middle of nowhere, direct line of sight with no attenuation or interference, you'd see a range similar to 10 kilometers or around 6 miles. Obviously, you're never going to see that in a city environment, but I think it conveys the differences between the technologies that are used today, like Wi-Fi, that are used to distribute IoT signals on multifamily properties, and LoRaWAN, right? So the types of things or the types of devices that we're integrating into these apartment units, they don't require a high bandwidth connection. All you need to do is send tiny packets and bits of information. And for example, who has access to these doors, or what should the set point be? That's not huge amounts of data that we're trying to move across this network. And so LoRaWAN as a technology is a perfect fit. You know, why should we go through this complex and not unscalable process of bringing a network just for IoT devices when we can simplify that approach by installing one community gateway and connecting to all of our thermogates in all of our apartments across the property. And I think that, that just speaks to the value and the benefit of having LoRaWAN as the backbone to our technology.
And from an operations and property-wide perspective, how does Quext IoT, which we looked at today, fit into a larger picture?
Yeah, so jumping into that statement, Quext as a company, I mentioned at the onset of the webinar that the mission statement is to bring solutions and be able to make decisions, make smarter decisions brilliantly simple. And the way that we've approached that at Quext is to bring multiple solutions as a part of one ecosystem in a simplified manner. And that involves various verticals, including the IoT vertical that we discussed today. We've got other services and offerings for the industry as well. Quext Connect is a managed Wi-Fi product that basically allows you the ability to market internet service to your residents and see the benefits from an ROI perspective as the property owner as well. We've got our digital human, which you can think of as a chatbot with a face. So it uses machine learning algorithms and practices to build up a repository of information, which is very useful, and our industry recognizes that. But a lot of times you don't get the sense that you're interacting with a human, and that face, right, that our digital human provides is it's more of a sense of, it provides all the benefits of a chatbot, but it also brings in a more human element. Our property management software, these are typically the core of all the operations on a property. And it basically brings together the leases and all of the accounting functions on property. Our websites, instead of having to contact a developer every time you want to change a website for your marketing team or for a specific property, it extends that functionality to the on-site team or the management company without having to go through developers to make those changes and tweaks as time goes on. And then our resident portal, as well as a service that you can use to make payments or for our residents to be able to use to make payments on their leases, and to also be able to submit service requests and just make the communications and the experience of a resident more seamless on the property. So we've got all that to say that we've got a wide array of different services, and that's what we're started with today. We've got a grand vision for being able to provide services to our industry. And, Kieran talked on it earlier when we talked about data. I think that's going to be an interesting play for IoT as we look towards the future and the expandability of what IoT solutions can bring to the market.
So is there like a common thread or an approach that you took to sort of make sure that this, all these 6 sections actually work together?
What's the beauty? I mean, one of the challenges in our industry is that to get all of these services in one environment or ecosystem is typically very challenging and it's very cumbersome. Certainly they exist, but typically you're married to that ecosystem once you invest in it. And what we wanted to do, certainly we think of each of our offerings as competitive or superior to some of the other products, but one of the important parts, or one of the important approaches that Quext has taken is that we want to integrate and play nicely with all of the various offerings in our industry. And so just because you're using a property management software A doesn't mean that you're not able to use some of the other services. And that's integrating and more welcoming approach is something that we've focused very heavily on in terms of architecture and being able to enable certain services while not using all of them.
We had another question presented to all panelists. How does this play with a low-tech apartment resident? One of the design considerations of the system, as we mentioned, was to minimize the interaction between the tenant and devices, to minimize number of devices and to really hide them. They don't come out to play until they're really needed, or they actually silently inform the management of the Quext platform about issues, for example, water leak detection or temperature abnormalities or any other alerts which can be set within the system. I don't think that the platform as it exists today or envisioned when it's fully rolled out will require tenants to be technological wizards or require a deep hands-on experience with smart homes. We thought about the platform and built the platform in a way where active participation from tenants is not required.
Yeah, that's a great way to frame it, frame the answer, Gennady. And just to elaborate on that a little bit as well, we certainly understand, and it's a good point because I'd like to spend a little more time talking about this. We certainly understand that IoT and smart home usage is not necessarily something that every single resident in the world is going to want, but each of our devices can be used in, I'll call it a completely standard function or way. And what I mean by that is that there's no requirement that any of our users use our mobile app at all. They don't have to. If it's strictly a preference thing, then you can use the thermostat as a typical standard thermostat, and you can use the lock that we've integrated from our partner Schlage. You can just use the key fobs locally, and it doesn't require you to understand mobile phone applications well, none of that. Now, I think that's also an important distinction. And so whether or not, because smart home functionality certainly has, or at least from my experience, has been perceived as almost like a trinket or it's a novelty. But what's important about smart home in multifamily and designing a solution from the ground up is that we did so with the recognition and the understanding that there are benefits to be realized from an operational efficiencies perspective and from a resident perspective. And so it's two-pronged. Even in the cases where you have a resident, for instance, that doesn't want the technology, you're still able to recognize and realize those benefits from an operational perspective for every single tenant. And I think that's an important thing to point out because in the single family model, that's not necessarily true. It's either the resident finds value or they don't. In this case, a property will always be able to recognize the value from these systems. And everything you get from the resident perspective is just additional and beneficial as well.
So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. And thank you to our speakers for taking an exciting look at this.
Thanks, guys.
Thank